Wealth is about wisdom. You can separate a fool from their money very easily. And if you access money and you're foolish, you'll lose it. You have to have in order to build something above, let's say, 4 stories. After you get to the 4th story, you have to increase your ability to. So if you're a lot of cash flow, low maintenance person, just good. If you're looking for appreciation and cash flow, another way to make money is to buy a property that you're able to make a lot of money that way. So a lot of them ask, how do you scale up? How do you go from 1 or 2 or 3 properties to larger properties? And I tell them they have to be able to, and how to is important. These are the things that I've used, and they're simple, but they're very effective. A lot of people pray for an angel to fall on the hood with a briefcase with $100,000 when you're driving past opportunity every day without noticing it.
Today we're joined by Mathew Frederick, a real estate investing veteran with an impressive 40 years of experience under his belt. Mathew's portfolio includes everything from multifamily and commercial properties to self-storage and land development. He's built over 280 homes and has been an educator for more than 30 years, teaching investors across North America how to build wealth through real estate. Mathew, welcome to the show.
You know what? Thank you for inviting me, and I'm happy to be here.
Mathew, you invested in real estate for 40 years, right? What first drew you to the world of real estate, and how has your approach evolved over time? Given that lengthy introduction, you've been through a lot, so there's been a lot of evolving moments. But what does that look like for you from the time that you got started up to date now?
Well, what drew me to real estate was, I came to Canada when I was 7 years old from the Caribbean, from Trinidad and Tobago. And back in the 70s, 72, looking different was not the easiest thing. I didn't really have any representation. And although I had some great friends, I'd always get, I'm not going to say bullied, but disadvantaged. And therefore, I had this thing in me to say, okay, number one, I'm going to be twice as good as everyone else. I'm going to work twice as hard to get as far. And I'm going to have something physical as a representation to give myself almost like a birthday cake. So I worked extremely hard when I was younger, 16 to 19, had my own business. By the time I was 19, this is 1984, I was able to buy my first investment house, to which I moved out and lived in the basement, lived on the main floor and rented the basement apartment. And that house was about $80,000, but 80% of it came from my cash, from my past business. And then my parents gave me $20,000. So I didn't get into real estate because I wanted to become an investor. I just needed something physical to reward myself for what I went through, the good and the bad, which helped me to grow. 4.5 years later, my brother, who was a police officer, I was a systems analyst and a teacher. He came and said to me, he wants me to be his partner. I'm like, I'm not buying real estate. I already have my own real estate. He goes, I want you to be an investor. So I'm not doing it. He goes, I'm your older brother. I have a gun. You're going to do it. And so I got pulled into it. So I always so happy to see people who go into it by themselves and become investors. Yes. I was kind of forced into it. But you know what? After a while, I really began to enjoy it and loved it. So in the beginning, I did it for reward, and then I was pushed into it. Today, I do it because I want to do it.
How did that evolve? When did that switch go off where you're like, you know what, I love this. This is something I can see myself doing for the foreseeable future. This is a new path that I'm now willingly wanting to take. There's magic here, let's go deeper and let's grow this. When did that switch happen?
Well, as I bought my first house at 19, I had a chance to have a tenant for about 4.5 years. So I learned a lot about tenanting. But when my brother pulled me into it, after we bought our first triplex, and I thought, wow, you know what? I'm actually working 9 to 5 and I'm making a little bit of money too. I work 9 to 5. The property works 24 hours a day. I began to, fall in love with that concept. But back in the 80s and early 90s, so by this time it's about 1990, what we would do is we'd buy 2 houses, fix and sell, and take the proceeds to buy 1 to hold. And I like that concept of buy 2, fix and sell, buy 1 to hold. Because one provides a down payment and the other provides the renovation money. And I really like that concept as a systems analyst, and therefore that's why I really got into it.
And your portfolio spans from residential, commercial, land development. Can you tell us what made you decide to diversify across these different areas?
So for many, many years, I did the rental. By the time I got to 2007, I found that I really started buying multifamily buildings. And I mean, I enjoy that. Just really quickly, I went from having a number of single family homes where I had 2 units in them to deciding I had about 30 houses with my brother. And you know what? We were like a slave to those houses. And I'm
I was
thinking,
going to ask, what was the management like for that?
yeah, it was crazy because
Yeah.
we couldn't afford a manager for each house, even though we had a number of houses. Come home from a hard day's work, I get a phone call, a tree branch fell on a fence. I'm like, man, I just want my dinner. So at that point, we decided, okay, let's get something large enough where we can pay someone to actually be there. And we found 6 units could not carry that, but it was like 8, 12, especially 12 to 17 unit buildings could have somebody at least part-time who lived there full-time. So part-time working for us who lived there full-time.
Yes.
And therefore we sold a lot of our stuff. And then we ended up buying multifamily buildings. And after a number of years, we thought, hey, we have so many buildings and we know it. Why not learn to build buildings? So that was a transition. Houses to stress to larger, managed by somebody on site to, hey, we understand buildings. Let's go build buildings.
I mean, you've been doing this for a long time. Like I can just imagine how much experience you have, how much exciting times you've seen, and how much terrifying times you've seen as well.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken, you've been a part of quite a few. How many market crashes to date have you been?
So, because I invest all across Canada and I invest in the US also, it's about 7 market crashes. I recall in 1989, the interest rates went up to 19%. I mean, when I started, the interest rates were 13.7%. And by 1999, there was a dot-com bubble burst in the US, and that adjusted the market a bit. By 2007, it affected the US market. I invest there. By 2010-11, I invested in Alberta. The market had an issue. By 2018, the BC market had an issue. So I've had a series of issues with markets across countries and across the country.
Well, I'm sure given that exposure to it a number of times, your strategy's probably been honed in, it's evolved. What have you learned from that? What takeaways have you sort of implemented going forward from those experiences?
So a lot of people say to me, why did I go from houses to buildings to even strip plazas? Why did I go to self-storage and different things? It's not because I woke up and said, hey, I want to go there. It's an understanding that when the market goes up, certain strategies work very well. Buy, fix, and sell, buy and rent, even rent to own works very well. When the market's collapsing, then other things work very well. Self-storage works very well. I mean, it works among many markets. And certain activities where I started loaning money, that worked very well on the way down. In the flat period, I got strip plazas that were medical retail, things that people needed, offices, pizza, and so on and so forth. And then as things started going up again, I got into multifamily. So really, it's a ride. And as the market went up and down, I had to adjust my strategies to survive. I'm a hunter. I have to follow the caribou, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. No, 100%. You have to adjust according to the market. Now, currently, as it stands, though, how many different marketplaces are you actively holding properties or investing in right now?
So when it comes to single family, I still have, when I say single family, I mean 1 to 3 units, right? In that range. I still have property in Ontario, Southern Ontario. I would say Saskatchewan, Alberta, and BC. I don't have many, but so I have that realm. When it comes to the multifamily, the buildings, we'll say 24 to 64 unit, I would be in the Kitchener-Waterloo area, Cambridge area, the Barrie area, Hamilton area. So not downtown Toronto, more on the outskirts. When it comes to self-storage, on the outskirts of Toronto as well. When it comes to strip plazas, at the entrance to subdivisions. And when it comes to building, I generally build smaller subdivisions, 34 to 64 units, up to 113 units. And I build low-rise buildings, so 1 to 4 units with 1 story below ground for parking. And I generally had built those in Alberta. So again, and then in Alberta, I would say I also build small subdivisions. So I still have that in play. So my job today is more to asset manage, oversee
Yes.
what I have, not property manage, asset manage.
Yes.
I have property managers. And what is asset managing? When I look at a property, am I increasing revenue? Am I reducing expense? Am I going with the plan that is for this property? That's how I spend my time.
It takes a while to get to that position where that's where you focus in all your time and attention. Now, for people who are looking to branch out into land development for the first time, what's some tips or advice that you have for them? What are some learning curves or things that you found when you branched into that direction?
Well, first of all, you have to find someone who's doing it and someone who will spend time with you on the ground to walk you through the process. You can go to a workshop and that's all great, and if you get a mentor, you have to make sure that person's actually building and they've built a lot, not somebody who's just 1 or 2 years in and they call themselves a builder, because you will discover there's a lot of mistakes. But really important is we have to understand what's beside us. So picture I'm looking at a piece of land as a stream running through it. Now, if there's a stream running through it, what's beside me? Is that farmland? Do they have pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, algicides, antibiotics being peed from cows into that stream? So I have to be concerned about what's beside me, because all that can affect my land, especially if that stream needs some kind of an environmental impact study on what I'm about to do to the property, or some kind of a record of site condition. I might be beside a factory. Now my phase 1, 2, and 3 will come in. If I'm beside a railway, now I'm dealing with Ministry of Transportation, CN Rail. If on the other side there's a highway, I'm dealing with the Highway Act. If the property itself has certain trees that are endangered, I need to be worried about that. And if there are archaeological studies to be done, I have to be concerned, where are the services? Am I bringing in the sewer, bringing in the water, bringing in the electrical? That can cost a lot of money. And what is the noise impact, the traffic impact, the shadow study? Am I throwing a shadow in somebody's tomatoes? So there are a lot of little things that you want to consider. Even, am I on a regional road or am I on a city road? So I'm talking a lot, but I'm just saying that there's probably about 150 things that I look at right off the top. And then obviously I can share that with people if they're interested.
There's a lot that goes into that. Yeah. Now, you've alluded to this as well, but self-storage as an investment strategy has a lot of benefits to that. Do you mind highlighting what makes it appealing?
Yes. First of all, I stumbled into it. I had 5 cottages, and I used to use one self-storage. We'd store things there from the different cottages. I used to bring a coffee for this gentleman. He never talked to anybody. He was a grouch. But I would always bring him a coffee, a double-double, because I knew he drank it. And then about 2 years later, he was dying of cancer. And he said to me, if I want to buy the self-storage. And I'm like, well, you have 126 units. But self-storage is ugly. I like houses. Houses are beautiful. He says, real estate's not about beauty, my friend. This is a steady, steady place. He goes, my wife is not beautiful, but she's a good woman. I'm like, okay. So either way, I said, I don't have the money. I only have 100,000. He goes, it's $1 million. He goes, he'll give me a $900,000 VTB for 10 years. But I'm like, but you have cancer. You are saying to me you won't be here in a year or 2. Here's how grouchy he is. He goes, I want 10 years because I don't like my kids, but I like my grandkids. So I want my grandkids to have the money 10 years later. So I said, okay. In other words, I got kind of pulled into that as well. I like it because there's no pets, no kids, no washers, no dryers, no fridges, no stoves, no heating systems. I like it, especially if they are simple garages, although I am building a larger system now with warm storage. But I like it because, people are just renting a 10 by 15 or 10 by 20, and it's almost like a little shoebox with cash. And they pay a certain amount, 350 to 450. They pay it every month. And my security is a fence, video camera. I have a person who shows up on Wednesdays and on Saturdays. My costs are really snow removal, internet, that person. And, these folks, they pay the insurance, they pay the fees. If they don't pay, obviously, I have to clear out their stuff. It's not like on television where you see, wow, you can find an incredible piece of art if somebody left their stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for 20 years. People leave me junk, and it costs me $400 to replace that junk every time. So I'm still waiting for that Harley Davidson or that something amazing like I see on television. But it's really a business. That's the key thing.
Yeah.
It's not just you're renting. It is a business you have to run. And there are little things that you have to know, like instead of having this 10 by 15 is $350, you would rent it based on the season, more in some seasons, less in some seasons when it comes to cost. And you would rent them also based on availability. If I have 90% availability, then it's very cheap. If I have 100% availability, then it's empty. If I'm 90% capacity, then I rent for more. So the more capacity you have, the more you rent each unit for. The less capacity, you generally rent for a little bit less at that time. And you try to keep about 92% capacity. You want about 8% not full, because you want people to be able to move up or move down, else they'll walk away in sizes, where with multifamily, you want every apartment rented. So that's the big difference. If you're at 100% capacity, you need to increase your prices to knock down your vacancy so that you have about 8% vacancy. I know I give you these long answers, but hopefully that makes sense.
No, I love it. I love all the information in there. So for someone considering, okay, should I focus on residential? Should I focus on commercial? Should I focus on land development? Should I focus on storage? Looking at too many things at once and trying to get some sense of like direction. Let's dial it in on one thing first and master that. Okay. Where would you recommend people start? Now, it's not, you can't give a blanket answer. I mean, I get that it's unique for each person, but where do you recommend people start when it comes to gaining that clarity? What questions should they ask themselves? What things should they be considering when they choosing which path is right for them right now as the next move?
So it's really their level of risk, how quickly they want to get return. At the same time, what sort of money do they have access to? So if you're doing a land development opportunity, let's call it a 3-year opportunity. So if you're building a building, we're not going to build a large building now, we're building a low rise. So you spend 1.5 years getting site plan approved. That can cost you $500,000. And then you spend another 1.5 years building. So that would be something that somebody would consider if 3 years is their max. This is hard to raise money past 3 years for some people. It'll be a low rise 2 or 3 story building. Now, if it's going to be something that's going to be much larger than that, a 5-year, you have to have experience in order to build something above, let's say, 4 stories. Yes, you can go up to 6 stories with wood, for instance, but after you get to the 4th story, you have to increase your ability to actually build. Self-storage is a little bit different. It's, you buy something, if it's already there, there's a system in place, you're going to tweak it, and you're going to get a passive income. That property, previous to 5 years ago, self-storage properties did not go up in value. So you were never buying for increase in value. You were buying for a lot of cash flow with low maintenance. So if you're a lot of cash flow, low maintenance person, self-storage is good. But the reason why self-storage has gone up so much is because everybody wants it. And there's one in every corner, so therefore the value has gone up. But you're not really improving the land that much. If you're looking for appreciation and cash flow, you would get into a multifamily building. Probably, I wouldn't say 6 units, because that's an entry for everybody. And everybody wants that, so therefore it's expensive. And if you go above 24 units, the bigger guys can buy that. So between 18 and 24 is a sweet spot
That sweet
Too
spot.
big for the small guy, too small for the big guy. There's still somebody there to manage it. You're going to get good appreciation. You're going to get some good cash flow. It sets a prototype so that now you set how you do business for somebody to come in and be able to help you get the 34 unit property. After that, then you show your experience with that, then you get the 64 unit property. So generally that's what I would say to do if somebody was interested.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense because, timeline is a big factor, and raising the capital as well. I like the way you broke that down. Now I know there's one other strategy that I didn't mention that I know you focused on, and that's the ADUs, right?
Yes.
Do you mind highlighting what that is for people who don't know and sort of what that strategy entails?
Well, an additional dwelling unit or a tiny home is a property that you would build in the backyard. In most cases, it can't go past 45, let's say, meters deep or feet deep. Sorry, it's meters, because a fire hose can't go past that from the street. Ultimately, it has to be about 7.2 meters back from the house. So 7.2 meters back from the house, you build. And of course, you still have to have about a 1.2 meter from the back fence to the back of that house, right?
Yes.
So again, there's some restrictions. And on the sides, you should have about 1.3 meters. It can be done modular, meaning with sea containers that are put together and with wood finishes so they don't look just like sea containers. It can be built modular in factories out of wood. I like the modular because they can be built in a factory, even during winter, and brought on deck in the wintertime, as long as you have your foundation done before the winter. Or you can have somebody build it from scratch in your backyard for more custom. Generally, the sea containers are in the $200,000 range. Building custom is in the $380,000 to $480,000 range. All depends on what somebody wants. It's harder to make money when you go above 250K. So if somebody wanted an ADU that's nice or larger, it's more for family. So let's say one parent, two parents sold their house and then moved into the backyard, but you don't call it backyard, you call it within the compound, because nobody wants to live in the backyard. So now you're moving into the Frederick family compound. And then,
I love that.
that parent can sell their big house, build this ADU. Because, that parent can't sell the $1.8 million house and get a smaller $1.8 million house anywhere else. So why not take, 650 of that, 600 of that, and build something in the backyard, family compound, and then the rest of their money can help them sustain or maybe give retirement early. That's one element. It's not really a money-making element. It's a convenience for the family, or even have a young adult. One gentleman wants me to put one of these in the rear of his property so he can rent out his main house. And he's a retired certified financial accountant. Now, the moneymaker ones are the smaller ones that are about 300 to 400 square feet, 350 to 450 square feet. And they're under the $200,000 range, where now you can put one in the backyard and you can rent to a young adult. You can rent to a couple students, and you're bringing in about, let's say, $1,750 to about $2,500. And that way, now you're actually able to get a decent return on the money that you put in there. But again, I don't think someone's going to put a $400,000 ADU in their backyard and rent it out and make a lot of money. That's more for a family convenience, which is a bonus and benefit. And I created the business not to build them because they're too small for me to build, but to manage the process of finding the right one and installing it in the backyard for people.
Ah, I see. Okay, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. So these are more recommended for extended families, more so than the ideal investing strategy.
It's based on the price, right?
Yeah.
Now this is just my experience, but I find that if you go above 250K, it's hard to make money with that. So above 250K, that's really for family. You can rent to them. but it's more that way. I think
Okay.
below 250K, you can make some cash flow with that. Now, obviously, if you put a basement apartment in and you have your main unit and you have an ADU, that's great. Another way to make money is to buy a property that you're able to knock the house down, build a basement apartment, first, second, third floor apartment, and put an ADU in the back. So now we have a 4+1, all 2 bedrooms. You can make a lot of money that way. And if you were able to split the lot in half and do 2 side by side, now you have a 10 unit, technically. That's another way to make money as well. But the ADU will be in the back to the new builds up front.
And tell me, do you find that there are marketplaces where the strategy is a little less ideal?
A lot of it depends on the building department, and secondly, backyard size. So developers, when you hit 2010, they started really building smaller backyards because they're trying to maximize as much space as possible. So if you have a lot that's 120 feet deep, that's great. 100 foot deep, that's possible. But a lot of backyards today are very small. So you'd have to look at the subdivisions where they were built after. Now, I focused on 1970 to about 2000, that range of where they're built, houses were built.
Yes.
Because pre-1970, I don't have to worry about sizes of, let's say, water lines, power, sewer, clay pipes, and all that kind of nonsense.
Yeah.
And, after 2000, the backyards started becoming a bit smaller. So 1970 to 2005-ish. And then with a nice large backyard, that's more easy to do. If you have a big tree back there, good luck. The city will not want you to remove that tree. So it's more to do with the size of the backyard and also how complicated is it to actually put an ADU there.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I find that age is also prime for value add just in general in the home itself. You could find something and renovate the inside as well. So I know you've sort of highlighted that your strategies have evolved based off of the real estate market, right? Like where we at, what's a more advantageous strategy to pursue at specific times in the market. What upcoming trends do you see as potential game changers in the real estate industry over the next, let's say, 5-10 years?
Well, like I said, I really think that, a lot of people, when they reach 19, like young adults, they reach 19, for the last 20 years, they want to move away from home. They want to get away. That concept is changing because when they get away, what can they afford? So it really is that if you have a large enough yard to be able to have that young adult stay within that scenario, stay within that property. So I do think if you have a single family home or a 2-bedroom home, you're not making a lot of money there. I think if you have an ADU, then your cash flow is not tremendous. It's probably $500 a month. But you would need that third unit to actually make cash flow. And to make some good money, it'd have to be 3 units in the house. It could be like, basement apartment and probably one half of the house is a unit, the other half is a unit, or again, some combination with at least an ADU in the backyard. So that's a trend I think we're going to see more of. I think we're going to keep seeing people lending money, using their equity in their homes because they bought their homes for $400,000. They've kept it for many, many years. Now it's worth $1.8 million, and they will surge money out of it and begin to lend money as a way to make money. And I also see building like more townhouses, or stacked houses with zero backyard. So you have the houses from the front, and then when you go around back, a set of houses, along the back. And then you'll have shared accommodation for, let's say, backyard. In other words, more park area. And for parking, you might be able to still get parking in that unit or, across the street. So people will live closer together. Yes. But we have to be careful that we don't make it seem as though it's some kind of a cold block. People have to become more ingenious in how they make these things look. Because who wants to go
Yes.
home and feel as though they just got into one of the containers of your,
Yeah.
like an egg
Stacked
carton?
in a
Yeah,
sardine can. Yeah.
I'm living
No.
in an egg carton. You know what I mean?
And we've seen that a lot here in Edmonton, where I'm located, is
Mhm.
taking lots, redeveloping, building a sixplex or eightplex on it.
Yeah.
It's definitely a strategy that's thriving. Now, we've spoken about a lot of your experiences, but I feel we'd be doing the audience a big disservice if we don't share some of the biggest mistakes, some of those lessons that you had to learn the hard way, and maybe we can save some people out there listening so that they don't have to make them themselves. Can you share, even just one of the biggest mistakes you made over the span of 40 years? I'm sure you have enough to pull out. And how did it sort of shape your future investment decisions going forward?
Well, because I was really good at, let's say, houses, renovating houses, I thought I want to get into the commercial world. And I didn't know much about commercial. And I thought I didn't
Yeah.
need to know much about it. I could just learn it
Yeah.
all myself. And I bought my first commercial property thinking I could, rent the main floor and have an apartment above. And I sort of bullied my way through it. I was able to get a great deal. They were asking $800,000. I got it for $600,000. I got a $500,000 VTB as well. So I put $100,000 down, and I thought, I'm incredible.
Yeah.
7 years later, to realize the reason why they took it from 8 down to 6 is because it had environmental concerns. The reason why they gave me the VTB is because it had environmental concerns. My lawyer mentioned it to me, but I kind of pretended I didn't hear him. I says, no, don't worry about a phase one. I think I'm okay with that. I did a stormwater management assessment. And he figured I was intelligent because I acted intelligent. And because for many years I bought many houses, and he was my lawyer. But I did not go to a bank because I had the VTB. I didn't know what a phase one environmental was. In those days, the internet was not the same as it was today. And I bought this property, and then 7 years later, I went to refinance it because it went from 600,000 to 1.4 million. I'm like, this is great.
Yeah.
So I went to pull money out of it. I did a phase one environmental and realized complete horror. Not only did it have gas tanks below ground, it had hydrocarbons in the ground in certain areas. Plus, it was a super sensitive lot that backed onto a ravine. So I was dealing with, this is Burlington, so I was dealing with Halton Conservation. I'm dealing with the Ministry of Transportation because we were close to the highway. I'm dealing with, a railway because I was right next to the railway. It was a regional road, not a city road. And then I had to spend about $300,000 to clean up that mess. And I fought that property extremely hard. I changed it into different things, and I just kept fighting. And no matter what I did, I just couldn't win. So it beat me as an amateur. It even beat me as an expert. And finally, one day, a lady drove by and she stopped and she saw me there, and she goes, and she was crying. And I go, what's wrong? She goes, this property has a lot of pain. I feel it. I sense it. I go, you sense the property's pain? She goes, I feel it. It's screaming at me. I go, that's not the property. That's my pain. She goes, no. She goes, it's deeper than you. So I'm thinking, wait a minute. This is right by Dundurn Castle. There was a war of 1812. Maybe something happened on this property. Now, keep in mind that I accept responsibility for all the wrong things that I did. I did a lot of dumb things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How I bought it and didn't do my research, and I thought I was great and all this kind of stuff. But the most important thing is I had to let it go because I kept fighting it. I didn't want this thing to beat me. I was hunting my white whale, and I'm like, it's not going to beat me. And the more I fought it, so I had to learn that sometimes you just got to let it go. And I ended up letting the building go. I didn't really make money on it, but when I released it, it opened up a lot of, let's say, brain power for me to do other things. I did learn, I would say, probably 80% of what I know about commercial real estate on that one property, not the other 20 properties, on that one property. So it's like having 4 kids on one really terrible kid. That's how you learn to be a great parent, in dealing with that one child that challenges you to the max. And that commercial property challenged me to the max. In the end, it still beat me, but I learned how to clean land. I learned pretty much 80% of everything from it. And I walked away, but I had to walk away. I had to sell it, let it go, take a loss, and move on.
And how long did that process? How long was that process from the time that you realized this when you wanted to refinance all the way till the point where you're like, I'm done selling it?
From 2006 to about 2016. So 10 years I fought this thing because I didn't want it to beat me. I knew I could make it work. And somebody bought it. And then what they did to it was amazing. I'm thinking, I never even thought of that. Now, you remember, all this time I was a mentor, I was an international speaker. I'm solving problems for people. I'm solving problems like you won't believe. This one problem, this one blasted building, I could never solve. Everything else was okay. In the end, I realized that somehow I had a blind spot for this building. It was my first, and I think I loved it. And I wanted it to work. So I had to let it go.
Yeah. I think more on the practical side versus the emotional driven side of it all. Mathew, I know that someone as established as yourself doesn't get there by accident. There's a lot of good practices, a lot of good systems that you've developed and put in place over the years, though. Are there any that stand out that you're sort of willing to share with the audience?
Well, a lot of people spend a lot of time reading a lot of books. And, they say CEOs read 60 books a year, right? I didn't find that. I found that if I read 4 books a year, I read 1 book in January, I take all of January to read it, take all of February to pick 4 or 5 lessons, and all of March to implement them. Now, at least I have 4 lessons, and do that 4 times a year. 16 lessons that become behaviors, way more powerful than reading 60 books and being an acquaintance to 60 books. Yeah. So I just read 4 books. And then at the end of the year, my last book was always the book of me, meaning I spent the last month of December looking at all the things that I did right, all the things that I did wrong, not blaming myself or blaming anybody else, just looking at each thing. And I kind of wrote that book of me, my logs of what I learned each year, what I did right and wrong, and what I want to take into the next year. So that was very important, to not read too many books, but read enough to be able to implement something from it. Even if you read 12 books and you implemented one thing from each book that became behavior, that would be good for you. Secondly, I learned that it's not about what other people think. It's about what I think, about who I am. And, when I meet people, I don't go around saying, how many doors do you have and how many this and how many that. I listen to them. I'm not here to tell you how great I am. I'm here to listen to who you are. And what do you need? And sometimes when people try to hurt you, well, hurting people hurt people. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I want to understand that person. And if I can help them, phenomenal. And guess what? It's a symbiotic relationship. We might do something great together. So those are 2 important points. And the third one I would say is, before I wake up, probably about 30 minutes before I wake up, my dreams are more real. And I could literally run scenarios in my mind and even back them up and then come back again to those scenarios. Because I tell myself before I sleep to think about a certain issue. And then when I wake up, I write down my solutions. Because if you don't, you'll forget them. So I write it down right away. Then I go to a book of wisdom. In my case, it's the book of Solomon. I read something on wisdom. And then I try to implement that in the next 3 or 4 days, try to see if I can apply that wisdom. Because wealth is about wisdom. You can separate a fool from their money very easily. And if you access money and you're foolish, you'll lose it. So those are some of the things that I look at, as well as, I respect my parents. I respect myself. I try to do no harm. When I make a mistake, here it goes. I say, I'm sorry. I make the person even, make them whole again, go to the back of the line, and I work my way up. And that's how I was able to raise most of my money from older folks who are 65 plus when I share that little story with them. That when you screw up, you say you're sorry, you make them even again, go to the back of the line, you work your way up. all of a sudden, these are the things that I've used, and they're simple, but they're very effective.
Oh, there's so much wisdom in all of and all those things that you mentioned. Like going back to the first thing, you know, it was a realization I came to myself as well, is, you know, going through books becomes entertainment if you're not purposeful about it. You know what I mean? And it's just like, how can I go through the next one? And you're just consuming, and you just become a consumer. You know, yes, you may be consuming something
That's right.
with a little bit more intellect and worth to it than just consuming a series or a movie, but it's still just consumption. So putting it into practice and treating it like a textbook, I love that. It's like going through it, reflecting, taking actionable steps from it, and then implementing it, and then reflecting. I love that. Rather go through less and make active changes than just entertaining yourself with a whole bunch of resources. That is fantastic. I am curious though. You said the last quarter you focus on the book of you. Now, are you journaling throughout the year and then reflecting in that last quarter, or you take that last quarter to sort of reflect back, journal on experiences that you can recollect throughout the year? What does that look like?
Actually, that's a very good point that you raised there. At the end of each month, I do journal. In other words, I will sit down and just write things. I don't write them, they're scattered. I just write paragraphs. I write thoughts. I write realizations. I write things that I did wrong. And, you know, if it's not at the end of the month, sometimes at the end of the week, I put aside like 30 minutes. How did my week go? Great, not great. What happened? Where did I screw up? Fantastic. So what you do is you break it down. So at the end of the week, I might jot something down. I always have a pen and paper by my bed. I have it by the TV stand. I literally write things down that come to my mind because I would forget. So it's not a burden or an effort. Yeah. It's just a thing that I do. So by the end of the year, I pull all this paper together and I try to, put it in order because I date everything. I got to tell you, I use the same concept in real estate. Some people say you have to put aside 2 hours to go door to door, or you have to put 2 hours to do this. I just build it into my lifestyle that if I have a 10 o'clock meeting, or if I have an 11 o'clock meeting that takes me 1 hour to get there, I'm going to leave at 9:30. Because I'm going to have a 30-minute window that if I'm driving from point A to point B and I see the owner of a property, you could tell the owner of a building, or you can tell if a property is distressed. Guess what? I'm 30 minutes early. So I pull aside right away on the spot. I go in, talk to the owner, leave information for whoever. And I find that most of my deals come that way because it's part of my lifestyle. If I'm going to the grocery store, I'm going to build that in. When I see a UPS driver, and they're pulled over, I say, hey, you know what? Here's what I'm looking for. Here's a sheet. I'm looking for these properties, looking for this kind of grass. You find this, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to give you a $20 coffee card. So that's all they want. They want coffee. They're addicted to coffee. You give me 5 of these addresses, send you a coffee card. Because there's 100,000 of these guys driving around all day. So why drive around all day? So what I'm saying is you build it into your lifestyle to be able to, on the way to point A to point B, you can make money. You find systems that are already existing, like UPS drivers, skip the dishes. I've never tried it with cops, but either way, if they're pulled over, you just say, I have this for you. I can keep you in coffee. If you find long grass, or if you see any issues, a packed rat, or if you see any issues, jot it down. As I buy these properties, I'll keep you in coffee. So I'm just saying, it's part of your lifestyle. That's how you become wealthy. Not, I have to do this day, and that day, and this that day, and that day. Okay, so
yeah, I love that because it's small incremental little changes that sort of just that stack up. But I like that. I've never heard that though. Leave 30 minutes earlier, and then I even think the mental frame behind it is you're not even rushing to get to your appointment now. You know what I mean? A lot less anxiety. You drive in, looking around, trying to see if there's opportunities, and what a different frame you must be in as well as you're traveling to your appointments. You know, not pedal to the middle. I need to get there on time, but more like, where's the opportunity? I have time. Let's find them. That's fantastic. I love that.
And it's so true. It's so true because a lot of people pray for an angel to fall on the hood with a briefcase with $100,000 when you're driving past opportunity every day without noticing it.
I honestly, I love that you highlighted that. And the UPS driver thing is it's a fantastic one. It's a fantastic one. Um, Tell me, for someone like yourself, what advice could you give? An investor that's a little bit more seasoned, maybe they're not as new, but they trying to find that balance of managing so many large scale projects or so many things on the go. And now it's a case of making that all work within the limited time that they have. What advice do you have for somebody in that position?
Well, it's all about work-life balance. So if you're doing 5 projects, but you're losing at home, even if those projects become successful, you lose your wife, you lose your kids, in a sense, you lose your peace, then you don't have a lot. In fact, if you do 5 projects, you're looking for the next 5, and the next 5, and the next 5. So what it is to pick the projects. I would, instead of doing 5, for instance, just to give you a number, I would do the 3 that make the most sense. The 3 that will say, hey, if I do this right, I'm able to get funding coming in for my next project. This is a great prototype to be able to show off. So I don't just do things to make the money. I do things that help me to advance along the path. So I pick the projects. Sometimes I'll pick 2 easy projects as opposed to hard, and then pick a complicated one to show that I'm able to solve complicated problems. Instead of having, 3 easies or 3 hards, I do 3 easy to 1 hard. People want hard. No, 2 easies, do 1 hard right. That hard one will set the tone for you to be able to get other things in the future. So it's a bit of a balance. And then lastly, knowing when okay, so if you're a coach of a baseball team, bottom of the ninth, you're last up to bat, and you're down by, let's say it's a tie score. First guy, gets to the base. The second guy wants to hit a home run. You got to tell him, pop that thing up in the air to get the person to the second and third. So that person's got to be out. Third person might come in and, bunt. So you have to know which properties to home run, which to bunt. I say this because sometimes I secure the right to buy a property and I assign it. So I bunted it away. Secure the right to buy a property, I site plan approved it. So I pop flighted away. Or buy a property, site plan approved it, and build it, home run it. But if you're going for the home run every time, good luck. You'll be tired.
I love that analogy and the way you broke that down. It makes a ton of sense. It really does. And it also I think allows you to keep momentum and then keep more consistent growth. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Versus just burning yourself completely out. And then it also sounds like you're very intentional. Like, okay, how am I getting the highest ROI on the limited time I have spent? Which of these deals is going to be that for me? And let's rather spend my time on those and then cut some of the noise out so that I have more capacity. I love that.
That's very, very true. I heard something a couple of days ago. Now, I'm 59 years old. I'll be 60 next month. In all my life, I never heard this, that when you're working out, you're actually tearing your muscle. And when you're resting, you're building your muscle. And that makes sense. But literally, sometimes I'm at workout 12 days straight. Am I doing myself justice here? No. I'm just tearing 12 days. I'm shredding. You have to let the muscle build. So if you're going shredding 5 this and 10 that, and you're shredding to become this amazing thing, you'll have no muscle. Same with real estate. One thing I noticed that's different in my time, in my day, it's okay to take 3 years to make some money. Today, people need to make money in 1 year. That's how the world has changed, right?
And I think it's okay to have urgency in some of your actions, but you need to have some of that patience to know that it's a long game. I'm not trying to get it now, and it's not going to happen right away. But more importantly, there's a portion of hard work, determination, and like hustle culture, right? But I love the fact that you highlighted the wisdom and the risk recovery phase being just as important. You need the hard work, but just the hard work and just pushing nonstop without taking a break back, taking a step back, reflecting. I see that's something that you do. And I know that's something personally I'm trying to be more purposeful with, so that you could get more growth in that reflection, but like stepping back, take some time, and couple that effort and action with wisdom and a little balance. That's some of my takeaway from today's, amongst other little habits I'm going to try and implement on my end, by the way. I know we don't have a ton of time left. Let's move quickly into our rapid fire round. Do you have some time for that?
I do.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm just going to rattle off some questions. The first thing that comes to mind. Okay. What is the biggest mistake you see among newer investors who are trying to raise capital?
They don't spend time talking to older people. For instance, just really quickly, buildings. If you want to buy a house or do anything, who has the money? Still male dominated, still 65 to 85. They own buildings in Kitchener-Waterloo. Call the building owners, talk to them, say, hey, I want to buy your building. It's not for sale. Can we have a coffee? Let's talk a bit about how you became who you became. Let them see who you are. And then they see themselves in you. They want to live vicariously through you. Right? So talk to older people who own buildings, and they will provide them money. They have lots of equity. They need challenge in life, right? I mean, Viagra only helps in one area. They need you to be their Viagra as an investor. Okay? Don't forget that.
I love that. Honestly, that is it makes sense, but I don't think I've heard it verbalized that way before. I really, really, really like that. I like the way you put it there. Okay, so you've been an educator for 34 years? 30 years now?
So a mentor for about 24 years, but I was a teacher since I was 25. So a very long time. I taught college. Yeah.
Okay. What do you find specifically, I guess, geared towards later on with investors? What do you find is the most common question you get from investors, and how do you answer it?
So a lot of them ask, how do you scale up? How do you go from 1 or 2 or 3 properties up to larger properties? And I tell them they have to be able to express themselves, tell their stories better. And how to tell that story is important. Yeah. So a story is like an egg, for instance. It has a shell, it has a white, it has a yolk, it has a germ, a little black spot in the middle. And every time you tell a story, it should be, let's say, a 20, 30-second story that can be up to about a minute, or with more details, up to 5 minutes. But each story has to have an impact. And if you talk in small stories, like you notice I give small examples, then you'll find that these little stories have an impact on people, and they want to be in your presence, in your orbit, and they may bring money, knowledge, wisdom, expertise, or insight onto an upcoming deal. You just have to figure out, and this is when I mentor people, I show them what is the egg, what is the yolk, what is the white in your story. And I help them mine, M-I-N-E, their history and find things in it. Even if they're 22 years old, there are a lot of things that have happened that we could take and create a more interesting person, because people like interesting people. So that's huge. If you can't tell your story, I'm not talking about, Toastmasters kind of thing, which is good.
Yeah.
I'm talking about breaking eggs on people.
Yes.
Man, that's wisdom. That makes sense. Never thought about that. I like that. You know what? I like being in your presence. And if people like being in your presence, they want to do what you're doing. They bring the money to you, but you have to be interesting. And I got to help people do that because they're interesting. They just don't know it.
I love that. And sorry, this is rapid fire, but do you have any tip for anyone at home? Like if they're trying to work on their stories, getting themselves more interesting, is there any actionable steps they could take right now?
Yeah. You know what? They have to write down about write down sports, write down music, write down school, and then write down one lesson they learned in every aspect, or even ages. When I was 7, what's one thing I learned? When I was 8, what did I learn? When I was 12, what did I learn? My first job, my first team, my first relationship. What's one thing you learned? You have to write down what it is, what you thought it was, what you discovered about it, and how you attach it to something that's an ongoing problem that you can solve with. So that was very quick, but I'm just giving you an example.
I love that overview of the framework. Fantastic.
But it's all within them. You're looking within you because all your wealth is within you. You just have to know how to pull it out, right?
Yes. And then sort of tell the story and attach it in the right framework so that it's most impactful, right?
Yes. And I have probably 800 stories that cover about maybe 100 things that bother people. And if I'm talking to a stranger and I hear one of those 100 things, I can bring that story, which is something that was developed within me, and share with them. So I'm giving them something.
Yeah.
And it creates reciprocity. They want to spend time with you because you give them something first.
Do you keep like a maybe at this point a digital Rolodex of like all your stories, or maybe even hard copy?
I do. It's about this thick. I mean, I can get up and show it to you.
Okay, no, I believe you. I've been saying to myself that's something I need to be more purposeful about, so that it's not just stored up here, but that I have them all like laid out. Definitely a project of mine.
Okay, ready?
No way.
These are my real estate stories. All my knowledge.
That is insane. Wow.
And I also have I put it on video as well. It's a video library that I offer. So, but that's it. I write them down.
No, I love that. Now, last one. What would you say is the most rewarding thing you find from teaching and coaching investors?
So a lot of my past students, I won't give their names, but I would say right now would be the number one broker in a certain city, and one or two of the largest, let's say, real estate training companies out there, ex-students of mine, as well as one of the largest private fundraisers, ex-student of mine. So that's great with those successes. But I just love meeting average everyday people that I've had a chance to share some of my experiences with. And, they've bought one or two houses, or maybe even three or four. They're able to buy a building, and now their kid has a university degree, not because of my doing, because I could teach, but someone has to take up the mantle and do something about it. But I just love seeing how it has affected people's lives along the way. And I've taught over 35,000 people to date.
Wow.
A lot of that is with large groups, but mentorships one-on-one, over 1,000 people. And when I'm 97, 98, I'm ready to go. I'm not going to be thinking of what am I driving or what properties I have. Did I make a difference? Did I impact someone's life?
Impact. That's it.
And the family that they've had. And to me, that's important. And I have to learn to give short answers, by the way.
No, well, here's the thing, though. There's so much value in the detail there. I know it's all flashy and ideal to have like short, punchy answers, especially in today's world and social media and short clips and stuff. But there's a lot of value in the detail there. So I appreciate those answers. I'm not going to lie. I know rapid fire, it didn't end up even being rapid fire, but I have no doubt that people out there listening actually appreciate the extra detail you add into your responses. So no, fantastic, man. Those binders are absolutely paying off. I need to get working on mine, that's for sure. Mathew, honestly, I want to thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. I know I got a ton of value, so I have no doubt that the listeners out there picked up enough actionable tips that they can actually go and implement. But before you go, where can people find out more about you if they want to learn, follow along your journey, or maybe look into the resources that you have to offer?
Well, they can go to my website, which is, it's 6 letters, rccsol.com/team is my bio, /ADU is about the ADU business. And also, they can contact me at Mathew with 1 T, mathew.f@rccsol.com. Tell me their situation, and I can probably help them with an answer along the way. So that would be really good. And you need to invite me back just for one whole session on all my mistakes and lessons I learned.
I would love that. That would actually that would make a fantastic episode. I have no doubt that people would just want to watch that, because that's where the value lies, in all those mistakes, all those lessons learned. And I have no doubt you have lots of binders worth of stuff that you could share with us for sure. And for everyone listening out there, I will be sure to leave all of that contact info in the show notes below, so you just have an easy way to go and find Mathew. But this has been phenomenal, Mathew. I really want to thank you for taking the time. We've actually gone a little bit of overtime. I appreciate you coming on and providing everyone with all this value. So thank you so much for sharing. And to our listeners, if you're serious about building your wealth through real estate, be sure to connect with Mathew. You heard how much knowledge and value he has to offer. So definitely follow along his journey and connect with him. Mathew, again, thank you so much, brother.
And I humbly thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for tuning in to the Wealth Through Real Estate Show. If you're looking to rapidly scale your real estate portfolio while balancing family, fitness, and business, then you don't want to miss the episode with Ryan Carr. This is your host, Alray Noble, signing off.